Grace and peace to you on this wonderful weekend. So happy to be with you from the First United Church of Christ in Millvale. And our reading this morning is one from John 21, 15 to 19. Okay, let's see. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time, he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were younger, you used to gird yourself and walk wherever you wished. But when you grow older, you will stretch out your hand and someone else will gird you and bring you to where you do not wish to go." Now he said this, signifying what kind of death would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, "Follow me." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It's a wonderful reading from the Gospel of John, and some people tell me it's their favorite chapter, and I can see that. The Gospel of John is interesting in that it begins with tracing the Son of God back to the creation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But then it ends so quietly at this campfire on the beach at the very end, when the risen Christ looks at Peter and asks, "Do you love me?" Now, in the end, that is the only question a disciple has to answer. Do you love Jesus? Too quickly, Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus simply says, "Feed my lambs." They were there at the campfire. Maybe they stared into the fire for a while, and Jesus says the second time, "Do you love me?" And again, Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And again, Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." But then a third time, Jesus asks, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And the text tells us by now, Peter is hurt. Perhaps he's hurt because Peter remembers that the last time he was at a campfire and answered those questions, he did not claim that he loved Jesus. He claimed he did not even know him. But Peter is not the only disciple whose actions have denied Jesus. Maybe we are hurt by those questions of Jesus. After what we have done or left undone, how can we say that we love him? But Jesus doesn't leave it that way. The question, "Do you love him?" will not go away. The whole Gospel of John has led up to this. The incarnation and the cross and the resurrection have all been about the forgiveness of sins and what Jesus has done and taught. So it really isn't about what you have done or left undone. It is about what Jesus has done for you. At the end of all of this, the one persevering question remains: do you love him? Unlike Peter, we can try to answer too quickly, "Yes, I love you. I told you that a long time ago when I joined the church." Or we can say, "We're not the kind of Christian that talks a lot about love all the time." Or we can say, "Look, I do what I'm supposed to do. I give to the church or the poor, or I do good for my neighbor." Isn't that enough? No, it's not enough. And here's why. Because sheep can get ugly, and they can be difficult, and they can bite. And if you are feeding them or caring for them for any other reason than truly loving Jesus, you will not want to do it for very long. You will not want to feed those sheep. So Jesus keeps asking the question until we finally really hear it. Do you love him? Every time you get kind of fed up with being a mom or a dad, especially this week if you are homeschooling your kids and can't get out and about, if every time you get weary of carrying Jesus ethics into the workplace or kindness onto social media even, every time you're exhausted by your own calling or failures or frailties or disappointments, the question returns. Now notice the question is not, do you enjoy sheep? Do you like the sheep? It's not, are you without sin? Or are they without sin? The question is, do you love Jesus? Perhaps we best echo Peter's third reply to the question, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. In other words, the love is as flawed as I am. You know me. The belief is mixed with doubt. My moments of doing something good are often marred with my moments of selfishness. You know everything about me, Lord. But you really know that I really love you. And I know that's not always apparent. But now that we've really heard the question, we're ready to really hear the mission. Lord, you know everything. And Jesus says, feed my sheep. And he goes on to explain, when you were younger, you girded yourself and went where you wanted to go. And when you grow older, you will stretch out your hands and someone will gird you and carry you to where you do not wish to go. Now, this doesn't sound really peppy or upbeat or positive, and I think there's a lot of pressure on Christians and especially Christian leaders to be upbeat all the time. This isn't peppy. We all have aspirations and dreams and goals and personal mission statement maybe, plans to get where we want to in life. And we're kids, we're taught to set goals and to work hard to attain them. Is this wrong? Not at all, but Jesus tells us that that is sometimes limited or immature thinking. Because eventually we will get to a place when we realize that life is not about making our own dreams come true. And here's why. Because your dreams are naturally going to be tainted with fear and limited. It's about learning how to receive the unfolding of Christ's dreams, big, amazing, almost impossible dreams, even if they lead you to places that you maybe rather would not go. A few years ago, I was preparing for a Saturday evening service, and I was with another congregant, a lovely person who helped out to get ready. And we heard a frantic knock at the door of the church, and we opened up, and the woman came in, and she was disheveled, and she quickly told us a long story about how her family had rejected her and she was on her own, and she'd had an addiction problem, and she had a lot of problems, and she really needed help. And we prayed for her and with her, and we gave her food cards and did what we could. And she quickly turned to leave. And I said, well, we're having a service. Wouldn't you like to stay? We really feel like this is what you might need. She was angry, and she turned and said, I don't go to no church that has no women minister. Slammed out the door. And the poor woman with me just froze for a second to see what I would do. I smiled. I wasn't laughing at the woman at all. But I'd heard that before. And what broke my heart is that we see people who reject what we really need. But we are called to help and to pray for them, not because they're so great, because we love Jesus. I see people who have hardships or mistakes in their lives, and for some reason they're quick to mock our Christianity or our faith. The thing that we long to give them, the acceptance and love and hope. Sometimes sheep don't behave very well. Good thing we love Jesus. I remember hearing this conversation about this passage often at the end of seminary. Gosh, it's been 20 years ago. My friends and I were all ready to graduate, and we had our new clerical robes on. A friend of mine gave me my robe, and it meant so much. Most of them were right out of the box, and we had all had a call to our first church. I'd been serving at church for a while. We were educated and trained and examined by the seminary. We were going to get our Master of Divinity, and that would permit us to pursue being pastors. And sometimes we would sit in the classroom or the pews, and someone would remind us of this question: do you love Jesus? Do you love me? And all of us are thinking, are you kidding? Yes. That's why we're here. We knocked ourselves out. We studied Greek. We studied Hebrew, the Bible, day and night. Pastoral care, counseling, ethics. We've been examined. We want to feed Jesus sheep. We love him. But then we would be reminded of what that means. If you say yes, it's going to be meetings, and it's going to be parishioners who only want you to not rock the boat and resist change. It means being subjected to endless nights of study and sleepless nights of heartbreaking moments, worrying about congregants, and never feeling like you're doing enough, and unrealistic expectations and conflicts. But it also means serving broken hearts, waiting to hear a word of hope or comfort. Broken spirits hoping to be healed. Feed my sheep. Feed my lambs. They are hungry. They're hungry for God, and hungry for love, and hungry for life. And your life is not going to be easy, and it shouldn't be easy. It's not part of the promise. It will wear you out. It will take you places you don't want to go. It will take everything you have. Since those days, I have been through a few robes. I think of them as being tattered by the nibbling of sheep and stained by my own human frailty or failure. But every Sunday when I wear a robe, we traditionally do that to remind ourselves it's not about us. I put it on my shoulders, like today. And I again hear Jesus' question: do you love me? And I dare to say yes. And I give thanks that his ministry has led me to places I didn't intend to go. Because here's the important part. Here's the good news. It is so much better than I intended. I could never have dreamed that my life could be so good, so filled, so blessed, so challenging. I love my life, I love my work, and I dearly love the people, the congregants, fellow Christians, more every day and more than I can say. And I belong to you in that way, in a way I never would have dreamed. That's my story. And I think you have a very similar story, just maybe different in the details. Because for all of us, the joy of serving Christ is found on the day that we surrender. Surrender our plans and resolve to go where we want to go, our expectation of what life will be like, and sometimes with whom we will live it. Joy is found on the day that you surrender to the dreams of Jesus. I have a cousin, and she and her husband were moving recently, and they brought down an old box of photos from the closet, and they looked at them, and they looked back on all those years. They saw their wedding pictures. He's in his army uniform, all their plans. They were young. They were certain. He was going to work in his dad's business, and she was going to have babies. But the business closed, and the babies didn't come. But they continue to look at the pictures, and they remember the picnics with lifelong friends they made when they had to move to another community when he lost his job. Or the vacations with their adopted children. He worked for a sales and delivery company. It was long hours, he cared for those loyal customers and he treated them with respect. It is as if with every customer or every child who came into their home, Jesus was asking, do you love me? What they don't really remember was the day that they surrendered to the goodness of the life that they were given, the life that they had. And it wasn't a life that they wanted or expected or planned for. And it took them to places they did not want to go. And now they are so grateful. A friend of mine from high school called a while ago and she needed to speak with me after her mother had passed on. Wonderful family. Her mom had been a teacher. She'd had a much older brother and she always envied me for having a sister. After her mom had died, her dad came and confessed that for all those years, he had had another family in a nearby community. Just shocking. She had a sister all along. And she was hurt and stunned. And we talked about it for a long time, and she wasn't sure she could forgive her father, much less me, this sister of hers. And we prayed, and the girl who was her sister had been raised in very difficult circumstances, whispers of who her father really was. She was angry at my friend and her family for having all of the acceptance. And I know she must have been praying about what to do. What I knew was that whether they realized it or not, the Holy Spirit was praying that both of them would surrender to this relationship, as broken or as complicated as it was, before it's too late. It's not the relationship that they wanted. It's the relationship that they have. It's their only chance that my friend and will have to be a sister, to have a sister. And she has a sister who really needs her. It's the opportunity they have to say yes to loving Jesus. According to the Gospel of John, in the end, we realize that loving Jesus means surrender. It means giving up. You have to give up your old struggle, your old expectation, maybe your old wounds. You have to give up, especially your attempts to be Jesus. All the guilt that goes with that. That's not what you need. That's not what you're called to do. Give it up. Let that go. Surrender. And then tenderly take care of the sheep he has given you as they are. Do you love him? Amen.